Hello, it's Sarah, and we're on day 32 of Read the Entire Bible in a Year. I hope you have a good day. Here it's a little cold and snowy, but that's okay. Today we're starting the book of Leviticus. Sorry. And interesting, Leviticus is highlighting Jehovah's holiness. And it also highlights the holiness of his people as they observe his regulations, because as they observe his regulations, closer they do that to what they can, then they make themselves like him, because he's the one who gave them the regulations. So it's kind of neat to think about. Makes it easy when you really start appreciating them. So we're reading Leviticus 1 through 4. What has always stood out to me when I've read that part is the communion sacrifice, what that meant. I really like the thought of the communion sacrifice, because communion is like eating together. If you think about communing together, and everyone partook of the sacrifice, the worshipers, the officiating priests, any priests on duty. And then Jehovah had his take in it too, as we'll read how he appreciated that beautiful smell, that wonderful aroma with him. So it was like they all were eating together. It was kind of cool to think about. And it signified, as they ate a meal together, a peaceful relationship. So that's kind of neat to think about. It dignified and enlightened his people by helping them let go of their mistakes. But then it also highlighted how important that relationship was to him and should be to us. It's kind of cool. The peaceful relationships. So it's very beautiful. Let's go ahead and start reading in Leviticus chapter 1. It says, "And Jehovah called Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, Speak to the Israelites and tell them, if any one of you would present an offering to Jehovah from the domestic animals, you should present your offering from the herd or from the flock. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he should present a sound male animal. He should present it of his own free will before Jehovah at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He is to lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted in his behalf to make atonement for him. Then the young bull must be slaughtered before Jehovah, and the sons of Aaron, the priests, will present the blood and sprinkle the blood on all sides of the altar, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The burnt offering should be skinned and cut into pieces. The sons of Aaron, the priests, are to put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. The sons of Aaron, the priests, will arrange the pieces of the offering with the head and the suet, which is the fat, over the wood that is on the fire on the altar. Its intestines and its shanks will be washed with water, and the priest is to make all of its smoke on the altar as a burnt offering, an offering made by fire of a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. If his offering for a burnt offering is from the flock, from the young rams or the goats, he should present a sound male. It is to be slaughtered at the north side of the altar before Jehovah. And the sons of Aaron, the priests, will sprinkle its blood on all sides of the altar. He will cut it up into pieces, and with its head and its suet, the priest will arrange them over the wood on the fire on the altar. He will wash the intestines and the shanks with water, and the priest will present all of it and make it smoke on the altar. It is a burnt offering, an offering made by fire of a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. However, if he offers birds as a burnt offering to Jehovah, he will present his offering from the turtle doves or the young pigeons. The priests will present it at the altar and nip off its head and make it smoke on the altar but his blood should be drained out on the side of the altar. He should remove its crop and its feathers and throw them beside the altar to the east, to the place for the ashes. He will split it at its wings without dividing it into two parts. Then the priest will make it smoke on the altar over the wood that is on the fire. It is a burnt offering, an offering made by fire of a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. Chapter 2. Now, if someone presents a grain offering to Jehovah, his offering must be fine flour, and he should pour oil on it and put frankincense on it. Then he will bring it to the sons of Aaron the priests, and the priests will take a handful of the fine flour and oil and all its frankincense, and he will make it smoke as a token offering on the altar, an offering made by fire of a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. Whatever is left on the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons as something most holy from Jehovah's offerings made by fire. If you present a grain offering that has been baked in the oven, it should be of fine flour, unleavened ring-shaped loaves, mixed with oil, and unleavened wafers spread with oil. If your offering is a grain offering from the griddle, it should be of fine unleavened flour mixed with oil. It should be broken into pieces, and you are to pour oil on it. It is a grain offering. If your offering is a grain offering prepared in a pan, it should be made of fine flour with oil. You should bring the grain offering that was made of these to Jehovah, and it will be presented to the priest who will bring it near to the altar. And the priest will lift off some of the grain offering as a token offering and make it smoke on the altar as an offering made by fire of a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. What is left on the grain of the grain offerings belongs to Aaron and his sons as something most holy of Jehovah's offerings by fire. No grain offering that you present to Jehovah should be leavened, for you must not make any sourdough or honey smoke as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. You may present them to Jehovah as an offering of the first fruits, but they must not be brought to the altar as a pleasing aroma. Every grain offering you make is to be seasoned with salt, and you must not allow the salt of the covenant of your God to be missing from the grain offering, along with every offering of yours. You will present salt. If you present the grain offering of the first ripe fruits to Jehovah, you should present new grain, roasted with fire, coarsely crushed new kernels, like grits, as the grain offering of your first ripe fruits. You are to put oil on it and place frankincense on it. It is a grain offering. The priest will make it smoke as a token offering, that is, some of the coarse grain and oil along with all its frankincense as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. Chapter 3. If his offering is a communion sacrifice, and if he is presenting it from the herd, whether a male or a female, he should present a sound animal before Jehovah. He is to lay his hand on the head of his offering, and it will be slaughtered at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons, the priests, will sprinkle the blood on all sides of the altar. He will present part of the communion sacrifice as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. The fat that covers the intestines, all the fat that surrounds the intestines, and the 2 kidneys with the fat on them that is near the loins. He will also remove the appendage of the liver along with the kidneys. Aaron's sons will make it smoke on the altar on top of the burnt offering that is placed on the wood that is over the fire. It is an offering made by fire as a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. If his offering is from the flock for a communion sacrifice to Jehovah, he will present a sound male or a female animal. If he is presenting a young ram as his offering, then he will present it before Jehovah. He will lay his hand on the head of his offering, and it will be slaughtered in front of the tent of meeting. Aaron's sons will sprinkle its blood on all sides of the altar. He will present the fat from the communion sacrifice as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. He will remove the entire fat tail near the backbone, the fat that covers the intestines, all the fat that surrounds the intestines, and the 2 kidneys with the fat on them that is near the loins. He will also remove the appendage of the liver along with the kidneys, and the priest will make it smoke on the altar as food, an offering made by fire to Jehovah. If his offering is a goat, then he will present it before Jehovah. He will lay his hand on its head, and it will be slaughtered before the tent of meeting, and Aaron's sons must sprinkle its blood on all sides of the altar. The part he will present as his offering, made by fire to Jehovah, is the fat that covers the intestines, all the fat that surrounds the intestines, and the 2 kidneys with the fat on them that is near the loins. He will also remove the appendage of the liver along with the kidneys. The priest will make them smoke on the altar as food, an offering made by fire for a pleasing aroma. All the fat belongs to Jehovah. It is a lasting statute for your generations. In all your dwelling places, you must not eat any fat or any blood at all. Chapter 4. Jehovah went on to say to Moses, tell the Israelites, if someone sins unintentionally by doing any of the things that Jehovah commanded should not be done. Sorry, I need to sit up. This is a little hard to see today. If the anointed priest sins and brings, chapter 4, verse 3, If the anointed priest sins and brings guilt on the people, then he must present a sound young bull to Jehovah as a sin offering for the sin he committed. He will bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before Jehovah and lay his hand on the bull's head, and he is to slaughter the bull before Jehovah. Then the anointed priest will take some of the bull's blood and bring it into the tent of meeting, and the priest will dip his finger in the blood and spatter some of the blood 7 times before Jehovah in front of the curtain of the holy place. The priest will also put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of perfumed incense, which is before Jehovah in the tent of meeting, and he will pour all of the rest of the bull's blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He will then remove all the fat of the bull of the sin offering, including the fat that covers the intestines and the fat that surrounds the intestines, and the 2 kidneys with the fat on them that is near the loins he will remove. And he will remove the appendage of the liver along with the kidneys. It will be the same as what is removed from a bull of the communion sacrifice, and the priest will make them smoke on the altar of burnt offering. But as for the skin of the bull and all its flesh, along with its head, its shanks, its intestines, and its tongue, all the rest of the bull, he will have it taken to the outskirts of the camp, to a clean place where the ashes are discarded, and he will burn it on the wood in the fire. It should be burned where the ashes are discarded. Now, if the entire assembly of Israel has become guilty by committing the sin unintentionally, but the congregation was unaware that they had done something that Jehovah commanded them not to do, and then the sin becomes known, the congregation must present a young bull for a sin offering and bring it before the tent of meeting. The elders of the assembly will lay their hands on the bull's head before Jehovah, and the bull will be slaughtered before Jehovah. Then the anointed priest will bring some of the bull's blood into the tent of meeting. The priest is to dip his finger into the blood and spatter some of it 7 times before Jehovah in front of the curtain. He will then put some of the blood on the horns of the altar that is before Jehovah, which is in the tent of meeting, and he will pour out all the rest of the blood at the base of the altar of the burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He will remove all its fat and make it smoke on the altar. He is to do the bull just as he did to the other bull of the sin offering. That is how he will do it, and the priest will make atonement for them, and they will be forgiven. He will have the bull taken to the outskirts of the camp, and he will burn it, just as he burned the first bull. It is a sin offering for the congregation. When a chieftain unintentionally sins by doing one of all the things that God has commanded he should not be done, and has become guilty, or if he becomes aware of a sin that he has committed against the commandment, then he must bring a sound young male goat as his offering. He will lay his hand on his head, or he will lay his hand, verse 24. Sorry. Verse 24. He will lay his hand on the head of the young goat and slaughter it in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered before Jehovah. It is a sin offering. The priest will take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering, and he will pour the rest of its blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering. He will make all its fats smoke on the altar, like the fat of the communion sacrifice. And the priest will make atonement for him for his sin, and it will be forgiven him. If any one of the people of the land sins unintentionally and becomes guilty by doing one of the things that Jehovah commands should not be done, or if he becomes aware of a sin that he has committed, then he should bring a sound young female goat as his offering for the sin he has committed. He will lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter the sin offering in the same place as the burnt offering. The priest will take some of its blood with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and he will pour all the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. He will remove all its fat, just as the fat is removed from the communion sacrifice, and the priest will make it smoke on the altar as a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. And the priest will make atonement for him, and it will be forgiven him. But if he offers a lamb as his sin offering, he should bring a sound female lamb. He will lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it as a sin offering in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered. The priest will take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and he will pour all the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. He will remove all its fat the same way that the fat of the young ram of the communion sacrifice is removed, and the priest will make them smoke on the altar on top of Jehovah's offerings made by fire, and the priest will make atonement for him for the sin that he has committed, and it will be forgiven him. Sorry about my getting a little froggy. The cold makes my eyes get a little harder to focus, and then my breathing gets a little funny too. So, one of the things that I thought about as far as facts, because I like to do something I appreciated and then before, and then something about facts afterwards, was I kind of put together the thoughts of what was required in a sacrifice. So that was, it must be, according to 1:3, it has to be a sound animal. If it's flour, it has to be a fine flour. So you're talking about a clean, good animal, something you would present if you had a really special guest. It should not have any leavening or sourdough. And it also mentioned no honey. Evidently, it wasn't talking about the honey of the bee, because that's something Jehovah found valuable. So when it talked about honey here, it evidently was referring to like made up honey, like the moisture of a fig, or juice or syrup of some kind that someone might have made of the fruits. 113, it talked about how every grain offering must have salt. So every offering had to have salt. All the fat, it said, belonged to Jehovah. Only the best parts were supposed to be used. It was only best animals were supposed to be used, and they were supposed to be washed clean. There wasn't supposed to be animals on offering offal. Offal is the word, OFFAL. It wasn't supposed to be waste on the animal, like if it went to the bathroom on itself or some got whatever muddy and stuff like that. You had to clean it up. And then it couldn't have, like, they would clean out the intestines and shouldn't have any dirty feathers and stuff. Even a bird had to be included with that. They would then be skinned and cut up, and then all the body parts would be put on the altar. Also, the blood and the fat would be removed as much as possible. We know you can't take all of the blood out. I mean, it's an animal, it's meats, but when it involved the animal. But as much as possible, you know, when you get cut, you bleed. Let it bleed and let that come out. This is the natural part of it. And I thought it was interesting because if you think about it, that made them not eat fat and not eat blood. And when we consider today, the doctors are always talking about how blood, our taking in blood and fat, makes all these problems for us. And here, way back then, he made sure they were separating themselves from that as much as possible. So, I mean, there's going to be a little bit of blood, there's going to be a little bit of fat left. So it's not like, oh, you ate it. But reality is, he told them back then, he protected them back then from having too much fat and too much blood in their diet. I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, they have whole medical centers. You can look at most medical places, hospitals, centers, whatever, on their website and find information about bloodless surgery, so people don't have to take blood in their body. Always finding stuff all over about how important it is to avoid too much fat in our diet, because it can clog up things in our body, and I think it can even like clog up our heart. I'm pretty sure it does, but I don't want to be like a doctor. But anyway, thought that was pretty cool. So the facts of when you present an offering, the things that were required. So you guys have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.